If you are an artist and you want to draw or sculpt characters or people in general, you need to know the basic anatomy of the human skull. The skull sits just below the muscles in your face. A lot of these muscles are actually extremely thin. The largest and most prominent parts of your skull are responsible for the way that your face actually looks. The most important parts that we're going to talk about today are the zygomatic, the temporal ridge, the brow bone, the nasal bone, the maxilla and the top teeth, and the bottom jaw and the bottom teeth. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and like this video. My name is Mike, and I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of how to learn the anatomy of the human skull. For those of you that are interested, I've put together a free reference guide, and I will put a link in the description below, and this guide will help you follow along with this video. When you're drawing a skull on paper, you can generally get the proportions in place by drawing a circle, dividing it in half both ways, then drawing another point below the circle about a half a circle's distance below, and joining the circle with the bottom point with some curved lines that make up the jaw. And the eye sockets sit right about the top of the nasal cavity and in between that and the center line dividing the circle. So this is just to give a general idea of the placement of all of the big bones in the skull. Now we're going to take this into Zbrush. If we go to Subtool, Append, and append in a new sphere, we're just going to carve out our eye sockets with the clay buildup brush just below the center line of our circle. From the side view, I'm just going to use my move brush to pull the back of the skull out just a little bit, and I'll just mask off a portion of the bottom and use my move gizmo to move this down, and this will be the start of my maxilla. We need to pull the front of the skull out using the move brush, and this is going to be our nasal bone and where we're going to carve in to create the nasal cavity. And again, we want the bottom of the nasal cavity to be at about the bottom of the circle or the sphere, like we did in our drawing. Now we'll use our clay buildup just to build up some of the sides of the maxilla and pull it out to where it meets the zygomatic at the bottom of the eye sockets. And again, just moving my camera around from different angles, making sure that my skull is the right shape from the side and from the back. Now we're going to build up our zygomatic bone here that's going to stick out where the cheeks are, and the zygomatic is actually flat facing forward and it's almost angled slightly down and forward. So I'm just using my H polish or my flatten brush to kind of flatten out the front face of that. Our nasal bone is kind of sinking into the face, so I need to pull this out a little bit further. It's important to remember the nasal bone actually sticks forward out of the face, so the nasal cavity is kind of like its own shape sitting on the front of the skull. The zygomatic actually wraps around the outside of the eye socket and travels back toward the center of the skull, where it connects right next to where the ear hole is on the skull. And you can see that little wing along the side of the head there that connects to the zygomatic, building up around the eye sockets here to create a nice little ridge. And if you're having trouble with your clay buildup or any other brush, if it's too thin, you can always go to Brush, Auto Masking, and turn on Back Face Masking. An important part of the shape of the eye sockets is there's space between the back of the eye socket and the skull where it indents in right around your temples. And there's actually a nice little corner of the eye socket there where the zygomatic and the frontal bone meet, as you can see on the chart. So here is a handy trick for how I did the bottom jaw. So I append in a new cylinder and I just scaled it down on the y-axis to kind of smush it into like a little hockey puck. Now from the top view, I masked half of the cylinder, and I guess I switched my mask so that the front facing part is masked and the back is not. Then you can go to Visibility, click Hide Part, and it hides everything that's not masked. And I go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and Delete Hidden, and what you're left with is just this simple strip of polygons. It's difficult to get the shape of the jaw correct, so I just wanted as few polygons to work with as possible. So you can mask off part of it and just move one at a time. And actually, if you turn on your poly group or line fill button, you can actually see how many polygons you're working with. As you're creating the bottom jaw, don't forget that it has two little wings that connect just below the zygomatic bone and below the temporal bone right near the ear hole in a little socket, and you can see that on the diagram. And once you get your shape just about the way you want it, you can go into your brush menu, go to Z Modeler, and hover over any polygon face, hold space, select Q Mesh, and select all polygons, and when you pull on any polygon, it'll add some thickness to your whole bottom jaw. The forehead is generally divided into 3 planes, one in the center and one on each side, so you can use your H polish brush to flatten out the center and then mildly flatten out each side. And notice where the corner of the eye socket meets that outer plane of the forehead. This leads us into the brow bone, which is right above the inner corners of the eye sockets. So there is a little bit of an indentation above the brow bone on the forehead right there, and you can just carve in slightly. Just be sure that there is still the ridge along the outer corner of the eye socket traveling up into the forehead, and that's called the temporal ridge. We want to make sure to preserve this part because it's very crucial to the structure of the eye sockets. First, I want to make sure that my nasal bone is lined up properly, so I'm making an indentation because the brow bone's actually faced slightly forward and down, and the nasal bone comes out from the face, slanting downward. And the top of the nasal cavity actually curves in a little bit, and if you look at a 3/4 view, it comes forward and then curves back in toward the skull before meeting at the bottom. The bottom jaw is a really unique shape and it's hard to get right. This is where the chart is going to come in handy because looking at multiple angles is going to help you get that shape right. From the bottom it's sort of a horseshoe shape, and from the front there's actually like a protrusion where the chin is, but on the sides there's like these little wings that come down like a wedge sort of shape. So there's all these unique complicated shapes within the bottom jaw, and it's nice to be able to just see it from all different angles. Notice how the sides of the jaw come down and wrap around the front where the teeth are. So it's almost like two little handles that come down and forward and wrap around the front of the chin. The bottom jaw is just kind of a difficult shape in general, so just use your move brush, use your H polish to kind of flatten out the outer part of the jaw. Make sure that the teeth connect at a level, flat angle going back, as you can see from the side view. Be sure to be looking at negative space here too. From the front view, there's actually a little bit of negative space between the bottom jaw and the maxilla and the teeth right there. And from the side view, there's the same kind of negative space between the teeth and the bottom jaw. If you're using your move brush and you're having difficulty getting things to travel at the right angle, you can go to Brush, Curve, and turn on AccuCurve. And this actually allows you to drag and pull things and it follows your cursor rather than the move brush kind of warping it as you move it around. Now I'm going back to the chin. There's a nice little bump where the chin is, and it curves back and in toward the skull before traveling back out again where it connects to the bottom teeth. So there's like a little indent just above the chin. Now we're going to go back and finish the shape of the eye socket. So from the side view with AccuCurve turned on, I'm just going to grab and pull back that corner and it makes a nice little point. And that corner of the eye socket actually sits a little further back from the side view. So look at the shape there, how it comes up and then out and forward and wraps around toward the nasal bone. Also notice the nasal cavity and how it sits on the maxilla and how the maxilla travels around and down toward the teeth. The bottom of the eye socket is kind of a combination of the maxilla and the zygomatic, and it travels in and angles, sort of curves down toward the top teeth. Anyway, these are just some of the tools that I've discovered for learning the basic anatomy of the skull, breaking it up into simple, big shapes, and trying to figure out how those shapes connect. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please leave me a comment down below and like this video. It will really help my channel out, and let me know if you want to see more content like this in the future. Whenever you're creating any kind of project, it is so important for you to use reference. So a couple of great ways to get reference is you can buy online learning courses, or you can read books. If you haven't already picked up this book, I highly recommend Anatomy for Sculptors. It is a fantastic reference and resource for the human body and anatomy. Some people learn differently, some people like to watch video tutorials better, so depending on the kind of learner that you are, just go with whatever you think is best for you. Personally, I learned a lot from this book, and I will leave a link in the description below if you want to pick up a copy for yourself. That is all the time I have for this video, guys. I hope that this was helpful. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications so you see whenever I come up with new stuff. But until next time.